Sonic Universe Issue 29. The first thing I have to say about the story arc right away is that it's Scourge's adventures in the ugly orange jumpsuit. I almost cringe at having to see him in that. Even if he does deserve it for the destructive way he was acting earlier, it's so humiliating for him. I guess there are plenty of more humiliating costumes he could be forced to wear, like a chicken suit. We start out with our time being completely wasted by a recap on who Scourge is by Scourge himself. I mean, come on, this is a simple concept. Do they really think we're not going to know who he is? He says that a knockoff is even worse than a nobody. But he also says he used to be a knockoff. He talks as if turning green magically changes the fact that he's still just evil Sonic. What's that across from Scourge's throne anyways? I guess we'll never know. Scourge thinks of the people who didn't like him being in power and stuff as small minds, despite not providing any reasoning as to why. And then he naturally mopes about how, now that his power is restrained, he's just some punk. And what's worse, the criminals who pick on him call him Snot, logically because he's green. They look like they're the evil versions of Drago, Lupe, and Sleuth. Wait, there's evil versions of Drago and Sleuth? That's redundant. And Lupe! Why are men and women in the same prison together? Is the Zone Cops organization so strapped for cash and resources and space that they have to have only one prison? But they could just divide one prison into two close-off halves and divide it by gender that way. There's a reason prisons keep men and women apart. Risk of pregnancy for one. So logically none of the female characters in this prison should be here. He thinks he used to be able to tear jokers like this to shreds, but now he's the joke. As we see him merely look exasperated, ready for a beating instead of looking scared, because he's probably used to this by now. Then he thinks in the narration that what's worse than being treated like dirt is being stuck with the worms, as he gets helped up and reassured by Al and Cal. Since they're so lame, he doesn't appreciate their annoying positivity and kindness to him. Cal says that the reason they got put in here is because their fighting started somehow damaging other zones entirely. Somehow indeed. Al tries to tell Scourge to put in perspective because while they used to be gods, he was only a king. And Scourge simply slaps him and walks away, too bitter and depressed to bother fighting or insulting any further. Cal still has pity for him, and Al says that the bright side he was talking about was that since he showed up, they don't get beaten up as much as by the prison yard bullies. Why do evil zone damaging monsters get a recess field play yard again? Let's mention the ridiculousness of their wasting resources keeping them alive. It's probably all out of a twisted sense of self-righteousness. Scourge, with his hands on the chain fence, says that with new criminals coming in, the fresh meat will keep the bullies distracted from him for a while. We see Zobotnik, the warden leader of the place, saying to the collapsed criminals that they'll have them oriented correctly and processed as quickly as their good behavior allows. Zobotnik's speech that they're his now shows that he's still evil, but expressing it in a more harmless, productive way because he's taking out on criminals instead of everyone else. Sonic says that he needs to speak with him, and Zobotnik shakes his hand, saying that he's his favorite Zone Cop, with Sonic saying that it should never be said that he doesn't enjoy his time with him, despite looking stone serious. Are they being bitterly sarcastic? Zobotnik says that the issue with Eggman Nega must be going well if the Zone Cop Corps could spare their star officer long enough to tell him how to do his job. He glares at him briefly, and as we see what I assume is the evil Tommy Turtle and an alternate Fang being brought in, Zobotnik says the war with Nega is as bad as ever, and makes a reference to the Death Egg madness, saying that his time spent here is costly as a result. But they didn't do anything about the Death Egg madness. Zobotnik says that he's not telling him how to do his job because his record is spotless, despite the complaints of the inmates. How's it spotless, then? Zobotnik says that nobody has ever escaped under his watch. So does that mean that Scourge was never? No, he clearly said he was locked up in the clink here before the control collar was put on him. So Zobotnik's lying, and he's not being called out on it, or even causing Sonic to have a thought bubble contradicting him. He says that he arrested Fiona and the Destructives for violating the pan-zonal lockdown. He's talking as if there was one, and how is anyone not in the Zone Cop supposed to know that there are lockdowns that they're not supposed to breach? Then I'm expected to believe that it's a first for them to get inmates from the Prime Zone. I don't see why the Prime Zone would have less Zone Hopper criminals. Sonic says that he's here because of their connection to Scourge. They took out 3 squad cars, sent 4 of Sonic's men to the hospital, and he doesn't think they were escaping the trouble on Mobius Prime either. He warns Robotnik to keep an eye on them. I'm guessing he won't because otherwise there wouldn't be a story. Robotnik, with a Snively in the background, is confident that the Prime Zoners will fall in line, and he says evilly that they've been aggressively pursuing his rehabilitation, as we see Scourge forcibly getting a haircut strapped to a chair. Why doesn't he just say punished and be done with it? Like, aggressively pursuing his rehabilitation would be more like brainwashing him. They should have the magic and technology to accomplish that, but I guess the Zone Cops are too self-righteous to do that too. We see Scourge reluctantly sleeping in a bunk bed underneath the evil Big, Smalls the cat, who has the mattress sag under him with a creak. We see Scourge getting used as a basketball, what I can assume is an alternate Knuckles, and one of the criminals bullying him by putting a book about how to not be seen on his head. Then finally, we see him getting thrown into a hole that I guess the underwear goes into, and him reluctantly eating some gruel at the table. Al and Cal sit next to him, and Scourge reluctantly admits that he went through a whole day without eating turf since the new inmates came in. Al reassures him that he's learned to appreciate the flavor. Scourge is surprised to learn about some new inmates for the Prime Zone, calling it Sonic's Zone despite all the different Sonics in the multiverse because he's so fixated on just one Sonic, and they probably know enough to get what he means by now. He wants to see who the Prime Zoners are, but Smalls grabs him from behind and slams his face into the food for being annoyed with him, blaming him for wasting food when it was him who did that. Suddenly, an ape guy grabs Smalls' fist and threatens him that he was just leaving, and Al and Cal reluctantly leave as the Destructics take over Scourge's table. As Scourge still looks annoyed, Fiona says, "Hey baby, you miss me?" and compassionately wipes the food from his face with a napkin. She shows that she's recognizing how he's feeling by saying, "Aw, don't be like that. You know, I didn't ditch you back at Freedom HQ. I knew you'd need backup, so I went and got us the Destructics." Except she had no way of knowing that she could return to him with them in time. It was obviously just about to end at the very last fight with Sonic and Scourge. She tells him that she cut a deal with Fenivis to get the Destructics on the Cosmic Interstate, got themselves arrested, and now they're here to break him out, making it clear that she loves him enough to do that. Problem is, by this point, Scourge has been so broken by the constant bullying in prison that he's too paranoid to appreciate this, since he doesn't think they'll be able to do it successfully, and he shouts that they're all going to get him killed as a result. He storms off, not saying another word again, having given up all hope at this point and just become focused on surviving. And Mephiles, who's revealed to be one of the inmates along with an evil Cosmo, says that Scourge needs to lighten up. That's a cool cameo, if totally meaningless because it could have been anyone saying that. And plus, I thought Archie wasn't allowed to use Mephiles. I wonder if this got them in trouble, like when they used the OVA characters in issue 101. That issue isn't being reprinted anymore for that very reason. As Fiona's looked at in annoyance, she reassures them looking on edge that she'll handle him and the plan will work. And Flying Frog complains that he was rude for calling them lame, as opposed to being rude for calling them freaks. That's a weird priority. Scourge, finally showing how he really feels as he looks scared, tells himself, "Alright man, keep it together. Everyone saw that, so they know I'm not with them. If any of the jerks in this place thinks I'm putting together again, I'm gonna get smacked around like the last piñata in the universe." You'd think at this point that he wouldn't be able to perceive the idea of him getting smacked around even more than he already is. He's briefly startled at a voice behind him, and then relaxes, saying that it's only him when he sees Jeffrey St. Cross, who lampshades that the anti-Mobius owners really ought to stick together. Also has a cigarette in his mouth that he somehow has in the interdimensional prison. He says that this is why the evil King Max wants to see him. Scourge rebelliously refuses at first, but changes his mind thanks to the grunts behind him. Oddly enough, the evil king says that he harbors no ill will against him for overthrowing him, because he rather enjoyed conquering the Zone of Silence after he was exiled there. He also enjoyed carving out his territory here once the Zone Cops stopped his Nightmare Army's multiverse invasion. Then he says that he even endorses Scourge's idea for renaming Anti-Mobius when he did. How the hell did he find that out? I guess Anti-Jeffrey got thrown in here after that happened. Him approving of Scourge's idea to do that renaming is giving us the reason why the Anti-Mobians here changed their names, like Jeffrey, for example, to Jeffrey. I guess I shouldn't be so surprised that an alternate version of King Max is so open-minded and reasonable to a Sonic, because the same thing happened with the Prime one. Then he says that he thought their agreement was that he wouldn't challenge his power here and his gang wouldn't kill him as a result. Scourge is confused, and King Max mentions that the Destructives obviously being there to break him out. Scourge says that it was Fiona's idea and calls him a crazy geezer. Good to see he still is a little gutsy even at this point. The king pets him, saying the insults won't save him now, and tells the gang that he'll serve as a lesson to the others. Fortunately for Scourge, he gets saved by a flying frog's extendable tongue as the Destructix came to save him. Fiona says to the king, "Ooh, what a scary old man," being gutsy like that, which I like. And she shows compassion once again by bothering to help the dazed Scourge to his feet when she doesn't have to. Also, she's calling him babe, which is weird. She orders the Destructix to make sure that nobody gets rowdy while she talks to him, and the ape calls him a lost cause as she just looks at him annoyed. Later, she sits him down and asks, "What happened to you?" She asks how the criminals could even land a hand on him. Scourge, with his head hung low, tells her about the inhibitor collar he's wearing, and also mentions that they keep his spines pruned short. Okay, how does that make someone slower? Fiona comments that she thought she felt a bit slow, even though she clearly doesn't have her hair cut short and never had spines at all, so that was stupid of her to say. Scourge says unhappily that what happened earlier was just what he expected, and now everyone's gonna beat him down for trying to make a gang. When Fiona says that he'll just bite back, Scourge says sadly while ragingly silhouetted for some damn reason. Easy for you to say. Listen, Fee, I've been beaten into the floor 10 times too many. I just want to be left alone. Fiona tells him that he does need a team, like Sonic, and of course Scourge is annoyed at her comparing him to Sonic, which you'd think should have learned to not do by now. Scourge complains that he shouldn't need a bunch of buddies to cuddle up to, and conquer the whole planet on his own. I'll say he thought to say the word cuddle up specifically. Fiona puts her hand on his shoulder and has the guts to say that he just beat a bunch of regional warlords and said that made him king. She really trusts him to say that kind of stuff to his face. And Scourge must really value her to not even so much as yell at her for saying that. Then Fiona turns him to her and says that Sonic's freedom fighters being his friends makes them liabilities, meaning that he'd miss them if they were gone and worry about them and is attached to them. While Scourge could have a gang of cannon fodder and still be fine. Finally, this snaps him out of it, as Scourge says that he'll get his revenge with his new gang. This issue is by Ian Flynn. Half of me was kind of uncomfortable seeing Scourge getting bullied, and worst of all, having to wear that embarrassing jumpsuit. And yet, most of me was enjoying seeing all the different ways that he suffered. He deserves it after all. It's only karma that he would get to be the one being picked on for a change. And yet they do a good enough job getting invested and rooting for him to get his revenge. Because at the end of the day, he's still getting bullied, which is a relatable issue for a lot of people. The story is about how he ended up so beaten down and exhausted from getting beaten up constantly, with reference to getting broken bones on a regular basis, that he became scared and paranoid and just wants to be left alone. And after the Destructix save him from being killed by the evil king's gang, Fiona reassures him and talks him out of it. I love how she was characterized in this, like, she was so gutsy, the way she talks to Scourge and just insults people like that. And she shows compassion to Scourge, wiping his face and helping him up when she doesn't have to. And she's completely come to terms with the fact that she loves him. It's a shame that she won't get that this isn't the time or place for getting Scourge to show his soft side to her. I really have to question how the Destructix could manage to break out though. Because if the logic is that they're smuggling something in, don't they check prisoners for that exact reason? Don't they replace their clothes with uniforms for a reason? Whatever, it's magic. The point is, we finally see some good chemistry between the two for once, as Fiona is the one to snap him out of it and get back to normal.